This year has gone by so fast, so much so that we are 2 days away from the kickoff of the AFL 2022 Finals Series. Which teams will get up and win? How are they going to be looking going into each game? And how did round 23 finish up for us as a competition? All these questions and more answered in today's video, so sit back, relax, it's time to discuss some footy. What's going on, YouTube universe? This is Zirra. Thank you for joining me for another AFL tips, predictions and discussion video, where normally we would reflect on the previous round in detail and then get into the current round, but there's not really much to talk about in the grand scheme of round 23. The season's done. I tipped incredibly poorly. I only got 4 out of the 9. I went out on a limb to try and make the top 10. I was lucky to make the top 20 in the end. I finished 19th. The only big story that came out of round 23 was Carlton losing to Collingwood meant that for the first time all season, they fell out of the top 8. They missed finals for 2022 after an 8-2 start to the season. You don't usually see teams running that hot lose a top 8 spot late, but it happened. And the Bulldogs jump into 8th spot. That's all that really went down that was notable to talk about at all. Everything else kind of fell into place. Before we talk about the week 1 of the finals and team matchups and how I think things are going to go down, I just want to take the time first and foremost to thank all 38 of you who joined me on this year's journey. It's a downgrade from what we had last year, considering last year we had about 60 odd. We dropped down to just under 40 this year. I am hoping in 2023 we can push for 100 people in the competition. So once I get next year's competition up and running, if you guys could spread the word and get some more people involved, that'd be hugely appreciated. What I'm going to do now, however, is I'm going to, in no particular order, actually, you know what? There will be an order. We're going to go from 10th up. I was going to go from 1 through to 10, but we'll go 10 through to 1. I just want to give a special mention to those who managed to break into the top 10 this year. This is what I aimed for. It's something I fell short on. I finished 19th in the end, but I want to take the time to just give a special congratulations. That doesn't mean I love any of you less. It's just normally with competitions like this, you would see the top, performers get mentioned, and I thought rattling off a top 10, considering that's what I aimed for, would be a good way to just commemorate those who did really well this year. So in 10th, we had a 3-way tie. So Saintly 12, Ben P, CWA, Sean A, and Gramercy Riff 78, Nicholas M, all tied for 10th. Pommy Tiger, Rob J, came in at 9th. We have a tie for effectively what is 7th place with Max Clark, Max C, and Macca0303, Mac S. Rockstar Pool 69, Ian P, my brother from England, comes in at 6th. He had a good year. Welsh Duke, Duncan P, comes in at 5th. We have Frio 90, Courtney K, who was a leader in the competition for a very long time, coming in at 4th. Still a very strong I can't English today. Very strong showing from Courtney. Brighton 75, Kirk G, coming in 3rd. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a tie for equal first place. We have Some Cripple, Michael T, and Heidi U2, Craig K, both finishing equal first with 147 correct tips for the competition. Congratulations to the two of you. Normally some competitions and some people running comps would say, number 1 was separated from number 2 because of the margin, but the way I like to do it, I base it off of the overall tips made, because some people don't really get the benefit or the understanding of the margin betting. So Heidi U2, Some Cripple, congratulations again for finishing first this year. I will split the prize between the two of you, so feel free to reach out to me in the comments of this video or hit me up on social media, be it either my Facebook page or my Twitter account. And this is also a message to the winners of my 2020 and 2021 competitions, because Through COVID, I slacked a lot and I still haven't got winnings to those guys either. So during the off-season this year, I will cover everybody that I need to cover, and I just want to thank you again if you jumped on board this year, if you jumped on board previous years. It is always a lot of fun making these videos for you guys, reading the comments and getting the opportunity to share my love of football with you all at home. But speaking about my love for football, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to kick off my thoughts, my tips, and have a little bit of a discussion about week 1 of the finals for 2022. The first game of the final series this year, Thursday night at the Gabba, we have Brisbane taking on Richmond, and both clubs have got a certain stigma about them currently. Brisbane and Richmond, the last time they played at the Gabba, we all know Richmond lost that game. A lot of people would have expected Richmond to run over the top, but Brisbane finally broke their little hoodoo with Richmond and won pretty convincingly. However, we know Richmond does have the ability to win at the Gabba, given they are the only team so far to win a premiership there, which I'm going to hold on to as a Richmond fan as long as I can. But looking into these games for this weekend, I want to have a deeper look into how teams have performed overall so I can make a better judged decision, as well as having the opportunity to discuss further with you guys. Reflecting on Brisbane's last few games, a little bit of derailing started to go down at that Richmond-Brisbane game. We know Brisbane got out to a 40-plus point lead. They looked like they were going to hammer a big lead home, and Richmond's finals hopes at that point in time looked all but shattered. But in the gutsiest win of the season, I feel, from Richmond, they get up emphatically over Brisbane. It was a huge game. As a Richmond fan, I couldn't have been prouder of how they performed. But this is where a common trend started to happen. Brisbane went in with a very comfortable lead at half-time and let Richmond back in that third quarter, and then after that it was game over. The following week, Brisbane at the Gabba were dominating Carlton, and then during that third quarter, Carlton came out and hammered 8 unanswered goals, again looking very shaky. Following week, St Kilda, Brisbane down here in Melbourne. If it wasn't for Max King missing those easy shots in front of goal, they would have lost to St Kilda, who have been underperforming by a long shot. And then to finish the round out, they get flogged by, 10 plus goals. It is ridiculous to think that Brisbane, a club that has been, very dominant in their wins, have either let teams in by a big margin or just laid down completely and took a smacking. We look further back. Gold Coast Brisbane was closer than it should have been. They defeated the Giants. Okay, fair enough. Giants have been underperforming. They lost to an underperforming Essendon team. They monstered the Bulldogs. The week prior, they got monstered by Melbourne. And then you have a look again. They only just managed to scrape in over St Kilda. They got beaten by the Dockers. So there's a common trend here. If you can get the jump on Brisbane early and make them chase, you are set up pretty well for a decent finish. On the flip side, you have a look at the last month for Richmond, which obviously kicked off with Richmond's win over Brisbane. You then move down to a very convincing win over Port Adelaide in Adelaide, which is never an easy task, and Richmond never looked like they were going to lose that game. They came out and absolutely monstered Hawthorn, and before I continue, a lot of people are saying Richmond had a soft run home because they had Hawthorn, they had Essendon. Let's not forget, Hawthorn have gotten up and beaten teams like Geelong this year, so let's not discredit teams. We can only defeat the team that is in front of us, and we don't know how each team each week is going to perform. But Richmond, in their last 4 games, have managed to kick over 100 points, and the last 2 games have won by over 10 goals. So you've got one team who have been letting teams in and either just falling over the line or they are falling incredibly short. And you've got one team that is just absolutely smacking teams and getting it done. Obviously, Richmond have had its moments in the past couple of weeks. The draw with Fremantle, the loss to North Melbourne, the loss to the Suns, that close game with Geelong. I've said it all year, if Richmond had won those close games, we would have finished in the top 4. That's just a general reflection on how well Richmond's best still is. Unfortunately, we weren't able to deliver. We managed to scrap into finals, which I think Richmond do better as an underdog. I really do. And I feel we've got two teams here that are going to be throwing everything at this game, nothing left in the tank whatsoever. Couple of mentions as team lineups go. We know Cam Rayner failed to overturn his suspension for I think it was rough conduct on a tackle that he laid that concussed Ben Brown. I don't think it concussed Ben Brown, actually. It just was deemed a dangerous tackle because Ben Brown hit his head on the turf. Was unsuccessful in turning that over, so Cam Rayner is a huge out for Brisbane, because when you look at the game that was played at the MCG, even though Richmond won, Cam Rayner was very influential in that game, and was also very influential in that final where Brisbane managed to beat Richmond. So I think no Cam Rayner is going to leave a bit of a hole. I think Callum Archie might come back in. He has missed the last 2 weeks through a concussion suffered from the hit from Patrick Cripps that, infamously Patrick Cripps managed to get off of. But the two play incredibly different roles, so I don't know how that's going to go down. Noah Ainsworth is out for striking Alex Neil-Bullen, and Marcus Adams has now been ruled out with an injury, which is another huge out for Brisbane's defensive structure. This is where Tom Lynch, Jack Riewoldt, they get together, they start manipulating the forward line to better suit themselves. Jack's been pushing further up the ground to take a defender out to leave Tom Lynch one-on-one. Tom Lynch, number one marking forward in a contested capacity inside the forward 50. You get him one-on-one, he will win 9 times out of 10. And he's running on an incredible streak of form as well. We've seen him kick 13 goals, I think, from 2 games. Huge. And I think Tom Lynch is going to be very influential in this string of finals that are coming up for Richmond, hopefully more than one game. And a lot of people are putting, pressure on Jack Riewoldt, saying he's not doing his job. But if you think about it, Jack Riewoldt is getting up the ground and structurally changing things just impacts Richmond's forward line so much so that other players can get off the chain. Shea Bolton's going to be up and about. Dustin Martin is set to come back, which is going to be huge for Richmond. Whether it's the last time we see Dusty in the yellow and black, I don't know whether that is going to be the case. I've personally had a sneaky suspicion that there's more to this injury streak that he's had this year than meets the eye, and he could be going, but whatever the case may be, he's fit, he's firing, he's going to come back in. That just adds another layer of depth to Richmond's game. I think Richmond get up and win this one. I think with all the negative press Brisbane have had, with Dane Zorko and the sledging thing that went on, and with Cam Rayner out injured, and now Marcus Adams out injured, Brisbane are going to try and shuffle things around a little bit so they're more structurally sound. But I think injuries to key players is always going to cause a hole to be left somewhere. I don't know whether the bigger hole is going to be Marcus Adams in defence, or whether it's going to be Cam Rayner running through the middle and also swapping up forward. But it also now takes a forward threat out of Brisbane's forward line, which means Richmond's defensive structure can kind of ease a little bit more into their intercept game. They don't have to worry about, being that one-on-one, because Cam Rayner going up forward forces the loose man to come to the contest. I think when you look at both teams comparatively, Brisbane obviously have the strength of being at home, but I think Richmond's momentum that they have built, and just, seeing Richmond back to playing dominant Richmond-style football, holds them in better stead for this final series. I think it's going to be end of the line for Brisbane this coming Thursday night. Richmond will advance on. Brisbane will be going on their holiday. Friday night, Melbourne versus Sydney at the MCG. This is going to be a huge game because of the extra week, the bye week between round 22 and the finals, which I hate, but regardless of that fact, that has bought Tom Papley enough time to recover from a concussion, which means he will be available to play in this game, and he is very lively in the forward line for Sydney, so that's a big plus for them. Collectively, when we look at Melbourne's last month of football, they had that huge win against Fremantle in Fremantle. They had the close finish against Collingwood, which saw them fall very late in the game. A very great game, though. We obviously had the emphatic win of Keziah Pickett kicking the goal against Carlton to win them the game. And then they rounded the year off with a huge win over Brisbane. When we look further past that, They had a tight-fought contest against the Bulldogs. They pretty much convincingly beat Port Adelaide. They lost to Geelong, but then they've picked up some big wins as well along the way. The big win against Adelaide, big win against Brisbane. Melbourne at the moment don't have anything to really prove. They've got their systems set into place. All their players are firing and ready to go. They don't have any key players that are injured, so we don't have to worry about, you know, who's going to come in for Melbourne to fill a spot. They're set, they're primed, they're ready to go, and especially in front of an MCG crowd, Melbourne will be looking to get a very convincing win on Friday night. When you look at Sydney, I feel they are seriously the dark horse of the competition when you look at the top four's structure. Just their last month alone, they had that huge win against GWS, 112-39. They had that huge win against North Melbourne, 126-88. They managed to beat Collingwood, who at that point in time was running on their undefeated streak, 77-50. They then came out in a close contest, which actually surprised me that it was as close as it was, 88-74, the way of Sydney in Melbourne. Prior to that, a very huge win against Adelaide, a convincing win against Fremantle. They belted the Bulldogs. They lost to Essendon, blip on the radar, but prior to that, they belted St Kilda. They had that blip on the radar loss to Port Adelaide. Prior to that, they beat Melbourne. They beat Richmond by that goal. So this year, if they haven't only just lost, they have won by a very comfortable margin. And you've got players like Chad Warner and James Rowbottom and Errol Goulden, the young core group at Sydney. I've said all year, I feel Sydney have the best young talent in the competition. You look at Nick Blakey in the backline, Tom McCartan, those type of players. The future crop of Sydney are firing now. When you look at other teams who are bringing in youngsters who, you know, 2-3 years on, are still trying to find their feet. Then you throw, you know, seasoned players like a Dane Rampy in defence. You got Lance Franklin up forward. You've got Luke Parker running through the middle. You know, these type of players, the young kids are rallying around them and making them look better, you know, and make them perform better too. They push their limits. This is a really tough game to work out because Sydney have come down to Melbourne and have beaten Melbourne down here. So I'm really struggling here to work out how I think this game is going to go. When you look at defense v defense, I think Melbourne's defense holds up stronger. When you look at forward lines, I think Sydney's forward line is more potent. So I feel Melbourne's forward line can do damage, but I think Sydney's forward line is more damaging in comparison. The battle of the midfield is where this game is going to be won. And, you know, a lot of people can say, oh, it's always down to the midfield. But really, when you've got players like Christian Petrarca, Clayton Oliver, who are coming out of the middle for Melbourne with a Max Gawn or even Luke Jackson in the ruck, and then you've got players on the other hand for Sydney, you've got Isaac Heaney running through, you've got Luke Parker, you've got Chad Warner, you've got these young, really fast, really well-skilled kids. It's going to be a great midfield clash between both these teams. I'm going to give the edge to Melbourne going into this game purely based on MCG and how well they play that ground. And we all know the SCG and the MCG are two different, you know, grounds comparatively. If this was being played at the SCG, I would have had no problem choosing Sydney because Sydney dominate that ground. I think Melbourne here is going to be too good in a very tight contest. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. But I would not be surprised to see Sydney get up and win this game. I wouldn't class it as an upset if it happened, because as I've mentioned, they've got the team to get up and win. I just think Melbourne at the moment, with how they've played the MCG, I think that has them better suited for this game. Saturday afternoon, the first of two games. I feel this is going to be the game of the first week of the finals, hands down. Top place Geelong taking on Collingwood at the MCG. We all know there's redevelopment going on at GMHBA Stadium, so Geelong were never going to get a home game there. This year, probably, they've got an excuse not to get the game because of the renovations going on. But this is going to be one hell of a clash, and there are a lot of players due to come back for this game. Collingwood have Taylor Adams coming back in, which adds another layer of depth to their midfield. But Geelong have players like Reece Stanley coming back in the ruck, Jeremy Cameron coming back up forward. Sam Menegola's due to come back. Sam Guthrie's due to come back. They've got a lot of talent coming into an already bolstered Geelong team. So we're going to be very top-heavy for talent in both sides. And that's why I'm backing this in to be such a great clash. Especially given Geelong is still running on an undefeated streak. And Collingwood, even though they had a couple of hiccups, are coming off some very great form as well. Geelong's undefeated streak can't be understated. Even though they have played teams in the back half of the year that are lower down on the ladder, and, you know, Geelong would have been expected to beat them given the class they're running with. But on reflection, look at this. At home, 131-46. They go up to Metricon Stadium. They beat the Gold Coast 119-59. They beat St Kilda 110-65. They beat the Bulldogs 94-66. They go to Port Adelaide and they win 106-94. 85-55 against Carlton, 91-63 against Melbourne, 144-32 against North Melbourne. The closest game they have had all year, upon reflection, was the 3-point game against Richmond all the way back in June. Since then, they have won by at least 3 to 4 goals, and then some games are as much as 10 plus goals. They are running hot, and they have had the opportunity to rest players at the back end of the year because they have been playing teams that are further down on the ladder, which holds them physically in good stead as well for those players that manage to get that rest in. Collingwood, for me, have been the biggest improvers of 2022 and probably the biggest shock turnaround in the space of 12 months. A bottom 4 team going to a top 4 team, absolutely huge. They haven't been getting those big wins that Geelong have been getting. Obviously, the 1-point win against Carlton, they lost by 27 to Sydney. They managed to get up in a close game against Melbourne. They get up in a close game against Port. They get up in a close game against Essendon. They get up in a close game against Adelaide. They get up in a close game against North Melbourne. They get up in a close game against the Gold Coast. They get up in a close game against GWS. They managed to get a little bit of a gap against Melbourne. They only just beat Hawthorn. They just beat Carlton. They managed to get a decent win against Freo. And then you've got to go all the way back to May for them to get a loss that is pretty sizable. As far as tipping this game goes, I'm kind of in the same boat I am with Melbourne-Sydney. I don't know which way it falls because both teams have been showing, you know, dominance on both ends of the spectrum. You've got one team that's been flogging teams. You've got one team that, on the flip side, has managed to win the close contest but have been showing a better brand when it comes to contested ball winning and just general ball control when it comes to getting things on their terms. I'm tempted here to go with Geelong purely because with Reece Stanley coming back in, with Jeremy Cameron coming back in, with a Sam Menegola coming back in, a Cam Guthrie coming back in, all these players coming in fit off of having a break, an extra break than the 1 week that everyone else has had, I think that might be too tall a task for Collingwood to live up to. However, again, Collingwood have been playing that brand where if they can keep the game close enough to 1 to 2 goals either way, and they can hit the front, I reckon it could be game over with the way Collingwood can come out and control the ball. But tipping wise, I'm giving the edge to Geelong for this game just. Final game of the round, people. Saturday night up at Optus Stadium, Fremantle taking on the Bulldogs. A lot of people would have thought that this was going to be Fremantle taking on Carlton, especially with the lead Carlton managed to pick up at 1 point against Collingwood back in round 23. But unfortunately, Carlton missed the finals. Bulldogs getting the win over Hawthorn in the final round means they step up to the plate. As far as underdogs go, Bulldogs are the underdogs because they snuck in. They managed to get it done. We've seen the Bulldogs win a premiership from this low down on the ladder before, back in 2016. However, Fremantle, the other surprise packet of 2022, are going to be playing at home with David Mundy's final season on the line. They've got a lot to live up to here. There should be players coming back equally for both teams. I think Rory Lobb will come back in for Fremantle. I don't know how the Bulldogs are going to structure up, but this is going to be a good contest as well because we've got some great talent running around. You've got, Andrew Brayshaw running through the midfield alongside the likes of Jack McRae and Bontempelli from the Bulldogs. You got the outside run of Bailey Smith, but then you've got on Fremantle the half back line, Rudd and Dash of Hayden Young and Jordan Clark, and those players delivering with silky smooth skills. You've got players kind of pickpocketed everywhere on the ground that have something to deliver, and this is actually going to be a really good contest to watch. I'm really keen on it. Reflecting on Fremantle's season, especially on the back end of things. We know they had the big win against the Giants up at Canberra. They won the Derby, or the Derby, however you want to call it, over in Perth, with Sean Darcy getting best on ground honours. The last time these two teams met was at Marvel Stadium, and Fremantle got the job done quite convincingly. And then we had a couple of blips on the radar for Fremantle, obviously. Melbourne getting up in a big way. The draw, their loss to Sydney, but then they come out and they flog St Kilda. They get a good win against Port. They lose to Carlton. Then they beat Brisbane. They beat Hawthorn. They beat Melbourne the first time around as well, in Melbourne. So Fremantle have capability. They've shown this year that they're not just a one-hit wonder in the way of only being able to pick up wins in Perth. They've shown they can pick up wins on the road as well. Bulldogs run home. Obviously got the win in the final round against Hawthorn to get their finals berth. They beat GWS the week prior. We know they lost to Fremantle the week prior to that. Very good contest against Geelong, but they fell short. The very big win over Melbourne the week before. They beat St Kilda. They get flogged by Sydney. They get flogged by Brisbane. They flog Hawthorn. They beat GWS, lose to Geelong, they flog the Eagles, they convincingly beat both Collingwood and the Suns. So when you look at far as travelling goes as well, Bulldogs probably in the last, couple, they haven't travelled well here. They didn't travel well to the Gabba, they didn't travel well to the SCG, but they travelled well to Canberra there, they travelled well to Perth there. They lost this game, but they still played well enough over in South Australia. So, and then obviously the last game of the year, they go to Tassie and they beat Hawthorn in Tassie, who played better football over there. So we can't say Fremantle has a strong home advantage because the Bulldogs have travelled well enough to know that they can win on the road. Coming into this game, I think Fremantle would have rather finished in top 4 because they would have been in a position where if they lost this game, if it was a blip on the radar for them, it's okay. They can, and blip on the radar must be my fucking word of the day, but they would have been okay. They would have been able to reset. They're going to throw everything at this game because finals appearances for this club have come few and far between. We have rarely seen Fremantle play in the finals, especially with the competition as big as it has been as of now. I think Fremantle have more to lose in the way that they pushed for that top 4 spot. With Mundy, as I said, retiring, they've got more to play for. Being in front of their home crowd's going to give them a lot of momentum. I really think the Dockers get this done, and I think they'll get it done quite comfortably. I think this is going to be about a 30-point win the way of Fremantle. Dogs, I'm happy that the Dogs got there in the end, but I think whichever the case may have been, whether it was Carlton, whether it was the Bulldogs, I think this is always going to be Fremantle's game to win regardless of who they were playing. They've got some serious talent running out there. As I said, the fact that they've got people to play for, they're playing for more than themselves. I think that's going to be a real driving factor in this year's final series for Fremantle, and I'm going to back them in for the win. Just to cap off how I've gone for my tips for round 1, I'm going with Richmond to defeat Brisbane and end their finals run. We are going with Geelong to beat Collingwood, and Collingwood will go on to play next week. I'm going with Melbourne to beat Sydney, and Sydney will go on to play next week. And we're going with Fremantle to knock off the Bulldogs, and that will be the end for the Bulldogs finals campaign. Let me know in the comment section down below who you're tipping this weekend. Hopefully, regardless of who I've tipped, we just have a very good round of football. I think we've got 8 teams that are going to be firing this year, and I feel with the 8 that we've got, there isn't a definitive team where you can 100% with certainty say they're definitely going to win the premiership. I think any 8 teams currently in the mix can win it. They've got the capabilities of doing so. But obviously, as finals go, a couple of teams are going to drop off each week, and unfortunately, I think it's going to be the Bulldogs and Brisbane dropping out of week 1. Thank you for joining me. Do leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. As I said, to the winners of this year's competition, hi to you too, and some cripple congratulations. Winners from 2020 and 2021, as well as this year's winners, please reach out to me so I can get you guys done and dusted, and I apologise for making the 2020 and 2021 winners wait for as long as I have. I apologise, but I'm keen for another week of football. I hope you guys are as well. I'm also keen for you to hit that subscribe button if you're new. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. Good luck to your teams this weekend if they're playing finals. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.